Hey, welcome to Evil's Comics. I'm Evil Mike, and I got a review for you from Boom Studios. This is Stuff of Nightmares. Issue number 1 is written and created by R.L. Stine, art by A.L. Kaplin, colors by Roman Titov, and letters by Jim Campbell. To be honest, the book was really dope, but let's get in there. It starts out with a new guy we're meeting, and his name is the Nightmare Keeper. He states that he used to have a cabinet of curiosities, so maybe if you're a big fan of R.L. Stine, you'll recognize that Easter egg. But otherwise, he sets up that, you know, in his collection of nightmares, he collects like stuff that have stories attached to it, and he goes into telling a story about the hand that, you know, specifically this hand over here. It's like the hand of the assistant to Abraham Lincoln or something like that. And then he shows this little statue and he tells this story about people that used to collect hands and other body parts, and kind of starts off our story. It's about the Cameron brothers, and it kind of shows this house off on a beach somewhere. It shows this delivery guy like dropping off something, and then basically the delivery guy makes the mistake of entering the house on his own without permission, and that's the end of the delivery guy. They do show some like blood that comes from under the door, but that's pretty much it. As far as the rest of the book is concerned, the delivery guy is never mentioned again, or the incident. He is mentioned kind of like in a report, but you'll see it kind of plays a bigger part. But we kind of see the inside of the house. We see the Cameron brothers and their assistant, and basically they are scientists that are working on like basically a Frankenstein style project. The assistant comes in with some fresh intestines that have just been taken out of something. The main scientist is kind of mad because they weren't all the large intestines that he thought they were going to be. It was just like a section or something like that. But she was stating that if they took any more, that the doctors would get suspicious. We also meet two of our other characters, and that's what I mentioned by the report. But we meet Diego and Sarah. Sarah happens to be a reporter, and they're on a beach having a date night. Sarah's all stressed out, stating that, you know, as a reporter, she kind of hit a dead end. You know, newspapers don't really sell anymore. Everything's digital now. As a kid and wanting to be a reporter, she wanted to be a newspaper reporter. So that part of her dream has kind of come to a dead end. But she's also stating that the stories that they've been having her on are like she's been monitoring the coyote activity and where they are or something like that. So it just sounds really boring. They eventually start hearing a noise that's coming to the beach. You can see the sound effects, and Sarah gets all distressed, wants to find out where the noise is coming from, because eventually it starts sounding like babies. At first it does sound like dogs or cats or coyotes, but it does start sounding like coyotes. Eventually they do find the house, and they start knocking on the house. The scientists and the assistants start freaking out because it's really late at night. But for some reason they do end up opening the door, allowing the reporter and the other guy to come in. And as soon as they come in, they kind of meet Frankie, and that's the thing that they've been developing, and Frankie's right here. The reporter and her date are all surprised and kind of like, what the hell is that creature, you know? And because they do get a whole bunch of BS in the beginning. They open the door and they're like, hey, we're studying climate control, blah, blah, blah. They're trying to, you know, keep Frankie under wraps, but it doesn't work. So basically they kind of explain that they tell them the real stuff, that they are scientists and they've created life using other parts. Like Frankie has a pig heart and other pieces of animals and stuff like that. And they even state that the brain is from a deceased boy that recently passed away. Frankie, the whole time you see him, he's always mentioning help me, and that's like all he can say is help me, help me. Like he's being kidnapped, but I don't think it's like in that motif. It kind of is in the beginning, but as it goes, you just realize that that's all he can say, and he says that for everything. The two scientists are brothers. The older brother, the main scientist, is kind of distressed. Of course, it's a reporter that stumbled upon their horrific, you know, scientific experiment, something that is highly illegal. But the other brother comes up with the plan, and the assistant, they kind of like tell the reporter and like, spin it in a different way kind of thing. And they're like, hey, how would you like the story of a lifetime kind of thing, instead of, them trying to escape and go tell the world about this horrific thing. How about we tell you, what we actually did, blah, blah, blah. The reporter actually like is on board with this and is okay with, hearing everything, and as it goes out, they start hearing the noise again. The main scientist doesn't like all this. He instantly wants to kill them, and he kind of states that a couple times, like trying to lock them in, basically, coming up with different scientific ways to get rid of them, kind of thing, like acid and stuff like that, with his brother and the assistant like, no, we're not that kind of people, what are you doing, but eventually they do take a fresh start motif, and they start over. They start explaining everything that goes into Frankie and what they had to do. As that's going on, that's when they start hearing the sound effects, and the reporter kind of barges in to find that, hey, they've been doing science, and science has failures, and they find out that the failures are these like weird monstrosity things that the brothers have deemed mongrels. The main scientist freaking out because he did not want them finding the mongrels. He was okay with Frankie, but he didn't want them to see his failures, kind of thing. And he actually presses a button that opens a door and releases the mongrels, and the mongrels end up eating the reporter and Diego, pretty much in seconds. The scientist and the assistant quickly, kind of back out of the room, and they click another safety measure, and some glass doors come down. At this point, the two scientists and an assistant, they're all freaking out. They're like, what did you do? And the main scientist saying that he like slipped and it was an accident, he didn't mean to do it. Of course he did, but and the brother and the assistant, they don't believe it. But basically, like in the end, the main scientist stating that he had planned for this, that he kind of figured that somebody would eventually find them, and he had like a backup plan, and he sets fire to the facility that they're in. They call it a house, but it looks more like a building. But he does set fire, and he leaves the mongrels. They end up taking Frankie, and they head to a boat that's supposed to take them somewhere else, to another facility or something like that. We do see here that the reporter, and it is mentioned kind of loosely before, but she was live streaming after they kind of went into the house. She got scared and stuff, especially when they were talking about locking her in there. Even though they did the whole fresh start thing, she never turned it off. So somebody was watching the live stream, and he reports it to the cops, which are now on their way to investigate, the house, that kind of thing. And that's basically where the book leaves off, of them, heading to the boats, and the police and everybody heading to the house, trying to figure out if it was real or if it was some kind of fake live stream kind of thing. We go back to the Nightmare Keeper, and he kind of mentions that the story will continue in the next issue, and that's pretty much it. All I could say was the story was really good. It was interesting. The art was fantastic. It was bloody. It was dark. I would say this is not written for children. It had very dark themes. It kind of, I think the first page there's a mention of like if you're feeble or if you fright easily, you shouldn't read this book, kind of thing. But for first issue, I loved it, and hopefully this continues. I'm hoping they'll do like a 5-issue anthology story thing where they do a start to finish story, and then maybe he heads to another, oddity that he has in his Nightmare collection, kind of thing. But that is my review. Please like, comment, subscribe. Let me down below if you read this, if you passed it, why'd you pass it? After hearing this, does this change your mind? I don't know. Let me know. I will see y'all later. Bah!